Welcome on in, football fans. It's your boy Gsluke here with our DFS and betting preview for tonight's matchup between the Buccaneers and the Falcons. Gonna break down the DFS Showdown side first, give you an idea of how to approach some of your GPP lineups if you're over there on Draftkings entering for the single game slate tonight. And then afterwards, gonna take a look at the prop side of things on Underdog and Prize Picks and give you guys 4 pieces of prop value that I've already entered that are going to be solid options for tonight. So a real quick video, gonna make this a quick, concise preview for you guys. It started off with first off the Showdown side and what I'm doing for the single game slate. It's usually good to start off with an injury report, but there's not much to talk about on that side. So we'll start it off with more so the game script angle, which is completely wide open for tonight. They've got less than a 3-point spread, which is going to open things up for either team, and you're not going to see a lot of chalk on one team versus the other. That being said, there's going to be a lot of 3-3s and a lot of 4-2 lineups built tonight. So if you're looking to get different in the large field GPPs, a real easy way to do so would be to build an onslaught type lineup, whether that's going out there stacking the Falcons in a 5-1 fashion, even a more leveraged 4-2 option with maybe a kicker for the buyback, or on the opposite side of things, going with a Buccaneers heavy lineup that is going to be much lower owned than some of those 3-3s or more popular 4-2 stacks. I think you're going to see a lot of people playing for a competitive game because they don't necessarily know what to expect tonight. And while in single entries, maybe smaller field GPPs, I'd be open to playing some 3-3s or more popular 4-2s. If I was playing at the large field GPP, you've got to go out there and get that leverage game. Go after that game theory edge that we always talk about, because these games, we never really know how they're going to shake out. The spread might be a 3-point spread. The Buccaneers could go out there and roll tonight. Would not surprise me if Baker Mayfield goes out there and shows out. On the opposite side of things, maybe it's the Bijan Robinson breakout game that we've been waiting for, and they go out there and run all over the Buccaneers and their home stadium. All of that is well within the range of outcomes. So if you're entering in a contest with 20, 50,000 other entries, why not take a shot on one of those two teams? We have no idea how this is going to play out tonight, and personally, my exposure in large field contests compared to what I'm doing in some of my smaller field stuff is going to look vastly different. So I'll just say, yeah, large field stuff, I'm going onslaughts out there in either team. The smaller field stuffs, we're going to see me playing those 3-3s. That being said, let's go player by player now and give you an idea of where that ownership is coming in and how to handle some of these different options. So up top, you got a very expensive Mike Evans. Projection's not that great at just 1.4x, but what you're going to get with your top priced player here is a little bit lower ownership than what we're used to seeing. Normally these top end options, guys that are over 10K, are going to come at a hefty price tag and hefty ownership, and it's really only one of those two things this time, right? You've got the hefty price tag but not the ownership coming, which makes them a pretty solid option for some leverage. You can see at the flex spot, I've got him at sub 40%, also only about 10% owned at the captain spot, and given that he has so much red zone upside, I really like him as a potential captain tonight. So if you're going to go out there, play an onslaught for the Bucs, maybe in that large field GPP, not only if you start with an onslaught are you going to get different, but if you're using a 10% owned captain, it's just going to add even more differentiation on top of that. Chris Godwin, also relatively expensive. Projection a little bit better when it comes to the points per dollar, though, so that's why he's also a little bit more popular than what you have with Mike Evans up top. I would say maybe a slightly lower ceiling than what you have with Evans because he doesn't have as much red zone upside, but also a higher floor because of his PPR aspect. So if I was entering in one of those cash entries, maybe a small single entry, that kind of thing, I would really like Godwin up top. He's got that floor you're looking for in cash. Single entries, that sort of thing, he's not going to kill you very often tonight, which is why I like him in that kind of format. If you're looking for upside, the large field GPPs, that's where I'd prefer Evans as a spend up option up there. You got Bijan Robinson at 9,800. He was shed of his injury designation, so he'll be good to go out there for tonight. Maybe a little bit limited, but I'm not really accounting for all of that. I think it'll be close to a full workload out there for Bijan. If you're going with a Falcons heavy lineup, he would be a clear captain option to go out there and mix in. So he's going to come with ownership. I would say it's a very fair price tag on a Bijan Robinson, and in terms of your points per dollar, is the best value that we have on the entire slate. You've got Baker down here at 9,600. Quarterback's always going to be popular, but always solid plays out there for Showdown as well. Drake London, very fairly priced at $8,800. You can see he's over a 1.9x points per dollar. So if you're playing in cash, some of those single entries, he's probably going to get spit out by your optimizer quite a bit. Kirk Cousins, same thing, 1.9x points per dollar right there. So you can see right here, these quarterbacks, a Drake London, for example, a Rachaad White down here at $6,800 is who you're going to get spit out there in a cash lineup. Your optimizer is going to try and get you on those players because they're the best bang for the buck that you can get. And you can see real quickly, right, it's a double quarterback lineup. You've got Drake London, receiver for the Falcons. You've got more of the receiving back out there for the Buccaneers. You can start to see where the chalk is coming in. You can start to see where the optimizer is going to be pushing people towards those 3-3 builds. So to get different about it, maybe you go with a 4-2 passing stack out there for the Buccaneers, right? Maybe you don't run it back with the Kirk Cousins out there in the same lineup, and vice versa, right? You could go with a Falcons heavy lineup in terms of the passing, and then just, I think a real easy way to get different would be to not buy it back with a Baker Mayfield. Maybe it's a one-off of one of these top 2 wide receivers. Maybe it's even a Bucky Irving down here at $6,400. Just doing that, right? It's not even that much different, right? It's a 4-2 as opposed to a 3-3 is going to set you off so much better when it comes to your ownership tonight. Darnell Mooney is $7,200. I would say maybe a little bit more expensive than he should be, but he is going to be sub 40% owned. Rachaad White seems to be losing his starting running back job to a Bucky Irving. So let's go ahead and just group these two together. I think that Irving is the better play tonight. You can see he's lower ownership than what you have with Rachaad White, but part of it comes down to script. If the Buccaneers are playing from ahead, I think you're going to see Irvine get a lot of those second half carries to try and run out the clock. Whereas if the Buccaneers are playing from behind, maybe you're playing a Falcons heavy lineup, Rachaad White has more of the receiving upside. So I think that really the running back situation comes down to the kind of script that we see. And if it's going to be one team versus the other leading the dance, you're likely going to see me buy it back with a different player in each situation. You've got Kyle Pitts, $5,600, not projecting all that well. He's had a really shitty start to his year, but he is only $5,600, and we have seen some big game upside from Kyle Pitts in the past. So I don't want to throw it past him to be the optimal captain, but probably a pretty decent value option when it comes to your flex position. These kickers I never have much to say about, and tonight is much of the same. They're about as average a play as you could think. Tyler Algier, if for some reason Bijan Robinson would be a little bit limited tonight, he would be a huge beneficiary of that, and to start the year has averaged over 40 yards a game, so has seen quite a healthy load of touches so far. These defenses are in play, especially if you're going with an onslaught kind of stack. I would say that they're a little bit lower owned tonight because of how many 3-3s you're going to see. If you're running a 3-3, it is nearly impossible to go out there and play a defense with that kind of script. So if you're going to use one of these defenses, do it in an onslaught fashion, right? Do it in a 4-2 or a 5-1 stack. And if you play them, I think it's going to be a real easy way to leverage against the field. Cade Otton is maybe my favorite value play down low. Reason for that is he's got a 3.5 reception line, and he is juiced towards the over, which puts him at a solid projection there at 8 fantasy points, and he's only 25% owned. And Ray-Mary McLeod, he's got a solid projection himself, but I've got him about, it's only 32% owned, I guess, but over here at the flex spot, he's nearly 1.5 times the ownership of what you have with a Cade Otton. So I would say between these bottom two options that I prefer Cade just a little bit more, because he's going to be playing almost every single snap out there for the Buccaneers, and there's just a lot more mouths to feed over there on the Falcons. So I could see Ray maybe getting a little bit less usage just because of how many guys you have on that team that are viable wide receivers, as opposed to over here with a tight end and Cade Otton that really isn't competing with anyone out there for the snaps and usage. So that's what I like in terms of value plays. You've got a few pure shots down towards the bottom of the board that you could consider, but the one that I want to point out for the sake of this live stream would be a Sterling Shepard, who last week after Jalen McMillan got hurt, went out there and actually saw quite a bit of usage for the Buccaneers. So you can see I've got him projected for 4 fantasy points, by far the best points per dollar value that you're going to find towards the bottom end of the board, and he's essentially unowned out there in GPPs as well. So if you're looking for a pure flyer, somebody to go out there, try and get infinite leverage on with only like 10% of your lineups, that's what you're getting with Sterling, right? Essentially an unowned play that has a chance to get there, and is only $1,600 as well. And now for the prop side of things, where I've got 4 props for you that I love for this evening that you might want to consider getting some exposure to yourself. So first off, we'll start with this Bucky Irving over on rushing yards, which is for his first 5 attempts tonight. So the line is 18.5 rushing yards, and this is a guy who's averaging 5.8 yards per carry this year. So even if we were conservative about it, put him at about 4 yards per carry over his first 5 touches, that would be a 20-yard projection. And given that he's been a lot more efficient than just 4 yards per carry, is why I like that over. And the reason why I prefer this over maybe his regular rushing yard prop is that he's not guaranteed to get a bunch of touches tonight. I mean, he's guaranteed probably to get at least 5 touches out of the backfield, but in a negative game script where maybe they're playing from behind, you could see a little bit more of Rachaad White in the second half. So rather than going out there trying to take his rushing yard prop, I prefer this as it's just a little bit more of a safe sample size. And then the other prop we took was this over on Drake London receptions, who he's gone over this his last 3 games with the Falcons. Tonight, he should have a relatively close matchup, at least if that spread ends up coming to fruition. And what I like about Drake is that it's a decent matchup against the secondary. That front 7 of the Buccaneers has been amazing against the run so far. They've been very efficient at holding running backs to a low yards per carry, which oftentimes means that you're going to get 3rd and mediums and 3rd and longs out there for the Falcons. Their number 1 wide receiver in those kind of situations by far is Drake London, as he's their best route runner, also their most physical wide receiver that can get that yards after catch. So I think you're going to see them really lean on Drake London when you get to 3rd down. And on books, he was about even money for this prop, so there's not a lot of line value per se with this, but given that he's covered it in his last 3 starts, he's got a pretty decent matchup tonight that should lead to some targets. I like that over there on Drake London. And then over here on the underdog side, we've got 2 more props that I've already entered. So first one's going to be an over on Bijan Robinson touchdowns. When I played it, it was a 1.08x multiplier. So of course, guys, you want access to everything as I enter it. Make sure to check out the Patreon page so you don't get any stale lines, that sort of thing. If you want all my exposure literally as I'm entering it, that's the place to be. Link in the description of the video as per usual on that. But what I like with Bijan is he was even money on Pinnacle to score, which is a book that has the yes and no option out there for scores, which makes it the best one to use out there for that comparison. And what I like with Bijan, though, is that you have the Vulture program going for him, and then on other books like Draftkings, FanDuel, where the odds are a little bit softer for scoring, he's like minus 145 to score, minus 130 on a few books to go out there and score tonight. So I like his chances. What I'll say about Robinson, he's had a little bit of a slow start to the year. I saw him against the Steelers. He wasn't that efficient on the ground there, but did get a bunch of touches. But years past, I mean, we saw this guy last year turn little screen passes into 80-yard touchdowns. So the fact that he's had that slow start to the year, I think is going to change at some point. And there's a reason why this guy was a top 5 draft pick in most fantasy drafts. He's an absolute stud. He's maybe the most electric player on the field at any given time. So I'll forgive and forget a little bit, especially when you give me a slight value on him to score and that Vulture program. If Algier were to steal a touchdown, then I'll go out there and void him for this evening. So I took that over. I've been trying to hammer these overs on touchdowns over here in Underdog, as that Vulture program just gives you a little bit of extra EV. And then the other prop we took was an over on Mike Evans receiving yards. Mike Evans, he's got a 4.5 reception line, but I really think he's due for a deep downfield pass. He's the kind of player that's got the size to match up against the safeties of the Falcons, which are a little bit undersized. They're some of the best safeties out there in the league, but they don't have nearly the physicality to go out there and match up with Mike Evans. And what I like about this matchup in particular is that the Falcons pass rush has been shaky at best to start this year. Baker Mayfield, with that really good offensive line, is likely going to have a lot of time in the pocket tonight, and that's huge for Mike Evans. While he's still getting a ton of separation here in 2024, he's a top 10 player in the league when it comes to the average separation rate. The issue for him is that he's not as quick anymore, right? He's not getting to the destination nearly as quick as what he was doing in his prime, or 4 or 5 years ago. But what he does have is he catches pretty much everything that you throw to him. So if he's going to have more time to get down the field, I think you could see him go out there and get some of those trademark 20-30 yard receptions that we used to know him for. And at a 59.5 yard receiving line, I absolutely love the over. So his longest reception line, I believe, was at like 25.5, 26.5 yards on books. I wouldn't hate that over, but I mean, if he's being projected for that sort of reception tonight, that would be half the yardage right there, let alone the other 3.5 receptions that he's projected for in books, would make this a solid over as well. So that's 3x. It paid a little bit better for my people over there on the Patreon page. But as I said before, if you want access to all of the exposure I'm getting to anything before lock that opens up in terms of value, check out the link in the description of the video to go out there and join the Patreon. Alrighty, guys, that is all I've got for the Thursday Night Football preview. Go ahead, smash that like button if you guys haven't already, and also subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of the content to come. That'll include a main slate preview coming out for Sunday slate, also Monday Night Football preview, Thursday Night Football for the rest of the year. You guys know it. You guys won't want to miss a thing. So subscribe, smash that like button if you haven't already, and also comment down below who you've got as the optimal captain for tonight. If you can get their score within 2 fantasy points as well, you will win a free month of my Patreon page. So if you want to try out the projections, you want to see my entire player pool over there on the Showdown Showdown side, up-to-date projections, all my prop slips and Underdog and Prize Picks. Real easy way to go out there and earn that. Just give me that optimal captain, as I said before. Give me your guess for their actual raw score, so not their captain score. It'll be their regular score at the flex position, and if you get that within 2, you'll earn that free month. That's simple. So appreciate you guys. Appreciate the support here on the channel as per usual. Best of luck with any of the exposure that you're getting to tonight, whether it's in GPPs. Go out there, take something down for me, whether it's on the prop side. Hopefully we can cash out for some profit there too and make it a good one. Let's get after it. I'm looking forward to it. Should be a fun slate and for the rest of the content throughout the weekend.